The rain began just before midnight, washing the grand estate in silver as thunder echoed through the mountains. Inside the mansion that everyone feared, a mistake was about to change two broken lives forever. The man known across the city as the most ruthless mafia boss had built an empire without trusting anyone. He had rejected every woman who tried to enter his life, believing love was nothing more than a weakness waiting to be exploited. Yet, on one unforgettable night, the only person who unknowingly crossed the walls around his heart was the quiet maid who accidentally fell asleep in his bed after working herself to exhaustion. By sunrise, nothing in either of their lives would ever be the same. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories that remind us hope can appear when we least expect it. Everyone called him Victor Romano, a name whispered with fear in dark alleys and expensive boardrooms alike. To the world, he was a criminal mastermind whose decisions could determine whether powerful people kept their fortunes or lost everything overnight. Newspapers described him as cold, untouchable, and impossible to deceive. Rivals feared him because he never hesitated. Friends were almost non-existent because trust had disappeared from his life years earlier. As a young man, Victor had watched the woman he loved betray his family for money, leading to an ambush that killed his parents and nearly ended his own life. From that day forward, he promised himself that no woman would ever get close enough to break him again. His mansion became a fortress where emotions were locked away more securely than the fortune hidden beneath its floors. Far away from the glamorous image people imagined, another life struggled quietly inside those same walls. Emily had never dreamed of working in a mansion owned by a feared man. She simply needed a job desperately enough to survive. Her father had died after a long illness, leaving behind overwhelming hospital bills. Her younger brother needed medication every month, and her elderly grandmother depended entirely on her. Every sunrise began with endless chores, cleaning marble floors, polishing antique furniture, washing enormous windows, preparing guest rooms that were rarely used, and disappearing before anyone important noticed her existence. She accepted every extra shift because every additional dollar meant another week her family could eat without worrying. Although Victor rarely noticed the staff individually, he often saw Emily quietly helping others. When an elderly gardener injured his back, she secretly finished his work before returning to her own duties. When another maid accidentally broke an expensive vase, Emily accepted part of the blame so the younger woman would not lose her job. She never expected recognition because kindness had become a habit instead of a performance. Unfortunately, people like Emily often carried invisible burdens. Night after night she worked until her legs trembled from exhaustion, smiling only to reassure her family during brief phone calls before returning to another endless shift. One stormy evening the mansion hosted an emergency meeting involving powerful business figures. Every employee worked beyond their normal hours preparing meals, arranging conference rooms, and cleaning the estate before dawn. Emily barely stopped moving for 18 straight hours. The rain flooded sections of the servant quarters, forcing several employees to relocate temporarily while maintenance crews worked through the night. Confused and half asleep after carrying fresh linens upstairs, Emily mistakenly entered Victor's private bedroom instead of an empty guest suite that looked almost identical in the darkness. She placed the blankets down for just a moment, intending to rest her aching feet. Within seconds, exhaustion overwhelmed her completely. When Victor finally returned hours later, he expected another silent night surrounded only by shadows. Instead, he froze in the doorway. There, curled beneath his blanket, was a young woman sleeping so deeply that thunder itself could not wake her. His first instinct was anger. No one entered his private room without permission. Guards could lose their jobs for such a mistake. Yet something unusual stopped him. Emily's hands were rough from endless labor, her shoes were worn beyond repair, and dark circles beneath her eyes revealed weeks of overwhelming fatigue. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't manipulating him. She was simply exhausted beyond human limits. Victor quietly placed his jacket over her because the room had grown cold. Then he spent the rest of the night sitting near the fireplace instead of waking her. For the first time in years, he watched another human being sleep peacefully without calculating danger or betrayal. The silence felt strangely comforting rather than threatening. Morning arrived with panic. Emily opened her eyes expecting another ordinary workday, only to realize where she was. Her heart nearly stopped. She apologized repeatedly, convinced she would be dismissed immediately. Every terrifying story about Victor flashed through her mind. Instead of shouting, Victor calmly asked how many hours she had worked before falling asleep. The answer surprised even him. Nearly 20 hours without proper rest. He dismissed everyone else from the room and quietly instructed the house manager to reduce impossible workloads for every employee. Rumors spread through the mansion almost instantly. People couldn't believe the feared boss had shown mercy. Some assumed Emily had manipulated him. Others believed Victor had finally lost his ruthless edge. Neither assumption was true. Something much simpler had happened. For the first time in years, Victor had been reminded that ordinary people carried invisible battles he had never bothered to notice. Over the following weeks Victor found himself observing Emily from a distance. She never complained despite impossible responsibilities. When she received her wages, most disappeared immediately into envelopes mailed to her family. She skipped expensive meals prepared for staff, choosing simple leftovers so another employee with children could eat better. Every quiet act chipped away at Victor's belief that kindness always hid selfish motives. One afternoon tragedy nearly struck. Victor's convoy was ambushed while leaving one of his warehouses. Although security managed to stop the attackers, Victor returned home with minor injuries. Doctors insisted he rest. During the following days Emily was assigned to deliver meals because senior staff feared disturbing their employer. She entered quietly, changed fresh bandages prepared by medical professionals, replaced untouched food with warm soup, and left without expecting gratitude. Her care contained no hidden ambition. She simply couldn't ignore someone else's pain. Lying awake during recovery, Victor began remembering his mother, who had always believed compassion required courage. He realized he had spent years building walls so high that even good people could no longer reach him. Wealth had surrounded him with luxury while loneliness slowly hollowed out everything inside. Meanwhile, Emily faced heartbreak of her own. Her grandmother's condition worsened unexpectedly, requiring surgery far beyond anything she could afford. Rather than asking Victor for help, she quietly submitted her resignation, hoping to find multiple jobs closer to the hospital. When Victor learned the real reason through the house manager, he immediately arranged the operation anonymously. Hospital staff informed Emily that an unknown donor had covered every expense. Only weeks later did she discover the truth accidentally. Instead of feeling indebted, she broke down crying because someone had shown her kindness without demanding anything in return. She understood how rare such generosity truly was. Victor also faced increasing pressure from within his criminal organization. Several ambitious lieutenants believed compassion made him vulnerable. They planned to overthrow him while spreading lies that Emily had influenced his decisions. To protect innocent lives, Victor made the hardest choice of his career. He dismantled large parts of the criminal network himself, surrendering valuable information that allowed authorities to destroy dangerous operations responsible for harming countless families. He sacrificed much of his fortune and accepted years of investigation, knowing redemption required action rather than promises. The mansion gradually transformed into something entirely different. Rooms once used for secret meetings became community spaces supporting struggling families. Former employees received fair salaries, education opportunities, and healthcare. Victor invested the remaining legal wealth into businesses creating honest jobs instead of fear. The estate that once symbolized intimidation slowly became known for hope. Emily remained by his side, not because of money or power, but because she had witnessed the frightened man hidden behind the feared reputation. She understood that people were rarely born monsters. Many simply became prisoners of pain until someone treated them as human again. Months later, Victor visited his parents' graves for the first time in years. He realized revenge had never healed his wounds. Only forgiveness and responsibility had begun repairing the damage inside his heart. Standing beside him, Emily didn't need grand speeches or dramatic declarations. Their shared silence carried more meaning than words ever could. Sometimes love arrives quietly, disguised as compassion during another person's darkest season. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you inspiring stories about hope, forgiveness, and second chances. Special request: before the ending, please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness changes everything," if you believe one act of compassion can completely transform someone's life. Years later, visitors driving past the old estate no longer whispered about the ruthless mafia boss who terrified the city. Instead, they spoke about the foundation helping orphan children, struggling families, and people searching for a fresh start. Few knew the incredible story behind that transformation. Fewer still realized it all began because an exhausted maid accidentally fell asleep in the wrong room after working herself beyond her limits. What looked like the biggest mistake of her life became the miracle that rescued two broken souls. Victor finally discovered that strength was never measured by how many people feared him but by how many lives he could protect. Emily learned that even the coldest heart could bloom again when touched with genuine compassion. Their story became living proof that destiny often enters our lives through unexpected accidents, quiet sacrifices, and simple acts of kindness that ask for nothing in return. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all: sometimes the bed we fall into by mistake leads us exactly where our hearts were always meant to be.